find 8 or 10 hours in their phone between Robinhood, Twitter, what have you, and we reinvest it. And the first thing is we got to figure out, okay, for me, it's physical fitness right away. We're going to spend 2 to 4 hours a week getting strong. Especially I coach mostly young men, but I think one of the keys to mental health is feeling as if when you're a young man, you could walk into any room and if shit got real, kill and eat everybody or outrun them. I think that should be your goal. I think it's instinctual. I think it'll make you feel strong. I think it'll make you feel kinder. The people who break up fights at bars are usually big, strong men. The second thing, you have to start making some money. I don't care if it's flipping on your smartphone to be a Lyft driver, or a TaskRabbit, going to CVS and stocking shelves. Even just a little bit of money gives you a taste for the flesh of money and gets you thinking about different ways to make money. And capital in a capitalist society is intoxicating. So we have to figure out a way to start making some money. Once we start making some money and we have a salary and we work at an organization, 98% of people will spend everything that comes through their hands, right? You live in a society where there are the most impressive people and the most impressive technology ever in the history of our planet have one mission, and that's to figure out a way to present you with the ultimate offer at exactly the right time. Oh, heading to Cabo for a girls' weekend? Wouldn't you like to upgrade from economy to economy comfort? Oh, only 2 of these rooms left. How about upgrade now to the special spa package? Oh, you just bought a pair of On running shoes. What about these Bombas clothes? It is nearly impossible for a young person to save money if it comes through their hands, if they get their hands on it. You want to figure out a forced savings. So everything from like the Acorns app that rounds up and puts the money automatically into a low-cost index fund. Find out what government programs there are in your nation that where if you sign up, the money's taken out of your check. Maybe it's matched by the government. Maybe it's matched by your employer, 401k, IRA, Roth. First thing you do, find someone smart at your company, talk to your tax advisor, go on AI and say, what forced savings mechanisms are most tax advantaged that I can participate in at an early age? Because you really just need to take somewhere between, call it 3 and 5% of your income if you start when you're in your 20s. And in the UK, they round up from 4,000 pounds a year to 5,000. There are tax deferred programs here such that you don't get clipped 20, 30, 40% each year. So the first thing is, I got to start making some money. The next thing is, I'm going to lean into my advantage. Your advantage when you're young, everyone has capital. When you're young, you have more human capital, you have more time than financial capital. So I'm going to lean into that advantage. And if I can just figure out the discipline of getting $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 a year into one of these programs where I'm not going to touch it, I'm not going to think about it, I'm not going to trade, I'm going to focus on what I'm good at. By the time you're my age, you're going to be fine. But the easiest way to do that is a forced savings plan. You have agency. Make some money, and immediately, I don't care if it's you start off making a couple grand a month as a TaskRabbit, whatever it might be. I'm going to take 2 or 3% of it and find a program such that it never gets into my hands and goes into a low-cost, diversified index fund.
One of the things I love you talk about in the book, The Algebra of Wealth, is you talk about the challenge we have with our goals. The first is we set unrealistic goals, and then they're super long term. So we say things to ourselves like, well, in the next 12 months, I'm going to save $12,000, and it's like we've never even saved $500. And you talk about this need to set a goal of like, this is how much I'm going to save this month. Like, this is where I'm going to start. And it's so interesting you talk about time and your work with young men, because I think time is so interesting, because I think today most people would rather finish their workday and we'd love to just switch on a show or doom scroll on TikTok. And so there is more time that could be engaged in creating other revenue streams, etc. But what is really blocking us from doing that? I think everyone knows they have time, they know they want to make more money, but there's something there that's just blocking us from getting activated. What have you found that is?
So I can't speak for the whole population, but generally speaking, the lack of executive function
Oh, shoot. On the paper this time. Good job, buddy.
Is the part of the brain that controls that is the prefrontal cortex, the kind of gas on, gas off. The part of the brain that says stop playing video games and start studying. That is maturing later and later in boys. It's somewhere between 12 and 18 months behind young women. So in many ways, a senior in high school, a woman who's applying to college, and a young man who's applying to college, senior in high school, the woman is competing against a 16-and-a-half-year-old. And as a result, fewer and fewer men are going to college. And we're in an economy where 40 years ago, 1 in 3 jobs needed a college degree. Now it's 2 in 3. Women are correctly and justifiably, especially young women, blowing by young men. They have more discipline. They have higher EQ. Quite frankly, they're just more mature. I say this in my own company. I have a lot of young people, a disproportionate amount of young people working in my organization. There's some very talented young men, but I would describe them kind of as dopey, almost a little boyish. I have some young women in my firm who could be the junior senator from Pennsylvania. Women are just maturing earlier. So there's certain biological things that get in the way of men having executive function. I also think that there's so much temptation. I think there's a little bit of a belief of kind of YOLO, this is it, live for today. I also think it's harder for them to save just because everything's so goddamn expensive. So it's discouraging for them. It's like, okay, I'm working my ass off and I can barely pay for my rent. So this is anecdotal evidence, but it largely represents the economy. When I got out of business school, the average salary was $100,000. I went to a quote-unquote elite business school. I went to the Haas School. The average house in San Francisco cost $280,000, so 2.8 times the MBA salary. Now the kids at Haas, still in elite business school, incredible compensation, average $200,000 right out of business school. But the average home in San Francisco is $2.1 million. Why? Because as soon as you have a house, you become very concerned with traffic, and you start showing up to local review meetings and making sure no new housing is built, which is great if you already own a home, going back to the rejectionist strategy. But it's almost impossible now. It's almost like saving for a home is out of my reach. The travel industry has boomed. And my thesis is that you have millions of young people who are going into their mating years and decided, let's save for a house. Then pre-pandemic, a house is $290K. Post-pandemic, it's $420. Interest rates from 3% to 7%. Average mortgage went from $1,100 to $2,200. All of a sudden, the American dream has become a hallucination, a fantasy. Kid, I'm getting a backpack and I'm going to do an Airbnb in Bangkok. And travel stocks, hotel stocks, airline stocks have all boomed because I think young people have given up on the American dream of owning a home. But circling back to your question, it's, I think, recognizing you have agency, realizing that this is hard. It's hard work. You work in an economy. Build a kitchen cabinet of people who can advise you. It's very hard to read the label from inside of the bottle. You got to work hard. There's just no getting around it. I don't care how talented you are. Beyonce works her ass off. I mean, it just, people who want to be successful and influential have to work really hard. And then what I would also say is that forgive yourself. My first job out of college was investment banking. I hit the lottery. Everyone was super impressed. I hated it and I wasn't good at it. And within 2.5 years, I was back living at home with my mother, unemployed. That almost kind of devastated me. But my kind of success comes from my ability to endure rejection and move through it, to move on. So if you're in your 20s and you're thinking, I'm not making a lot of money, I'm having trouble like having a nice life, I'm not entirely sure what I want to do, then you are exactly where you should be. Your 20s are for workshopping. Forgive yourself, but keep trying. Reach out to people for help. Show up. Get the easy shit right. Show up early. Be courteous. Be kind. Think about how do I get more certification. And the moment you lock in on something that you're good at and could become great at, go all in on it. And I come from the attitude, I'm assuming people want real economic security. Some people say, Scott, I'm not like you. I don't want to live to work. I want to work to live. Fine. But have an honest conversation with yourself around what you need to make to have a reasonable life. If you want to live in LA and you want to have a nice lifestyle, you just have to make a shit ton of money. That's just the reality. But if you say, I'm not all about work, then fine. Do you want to move to Santa Clarita? Or do you want to move to the Inland Empire? Or do you want to move to somewhere in Oregon? Fine. But have a sober conversation with yourself. What are your expectations? And realistically, what kind of commitment and trade-off are you going to need to get there? What I tell young people is you can have it all. You just can't have it all at once. I have amazing balance right now. But looking around, I think you do. But that's because I had almost none in my 20s and 30s. And I don't, this whole life, I don't know much about you, but the life I lead now when I'm in LA, I didn't even know it existed in my 20s. Because I'm like, I need to make money, and I'm not exceptionally talented. So the thing I can control is how hard I work. And there's no getting around it. It'll cost you some relationships. It cost me my hair. It cost me my first marriage. And this sounds crass, but it was worth it. Because now that I have kids, now that I'm older, I have a lot of balance. So it's a sober conversation. It's a kitchen cabinet. It's forgiving yourself. It's trying to find something you're good at. It's a lot of things. More than anything, forgive yourself. If things aren't working out in your 20s, boss, that's where you should be. And very rarely do people come right out of college and go like this.
Yeah, so well said. So much to unpack there, Scott, and thank you for kind of giving us so many points to check with. Jaspreet Singh breaks down the 3 habits that keep people broke. He reminds us that saving alone won't make you wealthy. If inflation outpaces your interest, your savings lose value every day. That's why wealthy people don't just earn more, they own more. Jaspreet's first real estate investment taught him that wealth isn't built by climbing the corporate ladder, but by owning a piece of it. His challenge to all of us: learn how money moves, ask why, and focus on ownership over appearances.
Struggle with terrible handwriting? Have trouble reading what you've written? You're in luck. Huawei MatePad 11.5S straightens out your handwriting in one tap, and it opens up a whole new world of possibility. Huawei FreeClip 2 is ultra-light at just 5.
You can tell me, what are the 3 habits that keep us in that poor or poverty mindset, as you said, and what are the healthy habits that bring us into the wealthy mindset?
Sure. So the 3, I think, biggest bad habits when it comes to money. First, probably the most obvious, I would say, is people following the 2 S's, where you're spending or saving all of your money. You'll never become wealthy if you do that. Number 2 would be you blindly follow the system without questioning the way the system works. And number 3 is you don't understand how money works. So if we start with number 1, the 2 S's, save and spend. Now it's interesting. If you look at the financial statements for the majority of people in America or even across the world, the way it looks is you make money, you pay taxes, you spend money, and then you wonder where all your money went. Literally. And so the majority of people don't have any plan for their money, and that's why the majority of people have little to no savings, and the majority of Americans have little to no investments. Right now, well, half of America has 0 investments. I'm talking about 0 401k, 0 IRA, 0 stock market accounts, 0 real estate investments, 0 gold investments, nothing. And then out of the next half of Americans that have an investment, only half of those have an investment outside of their 401k or IRA. So you have a very small percent, about a quarter of America, working America, that has any investments on their own. When you go back to the saving and spending, we're in a spending culture. America has a consumerism culture, and I joke about this, but the way I like to say it is traditionally Indian people make $1 to spend 20 cents. American people make $1 to spend $2. Yeah, thanks to the help of credit lines of credit. This is just the culture that we're in, where it's very okay and normalized to spend money even if you can't afford something. And what are you doing? Well, you're spending all your money making everybody else around you rich. But you yourself, you might look rich, but you're actually broke. There's a reason why the owner and CEO of Louis Vuitton is the richest person in the world, whereas the majority of people who wear Louis Vuitton are broke. The people who are wearing Louis Vuitton are trying to look rich, and how are you doing that? Well, you're making the owner of Louis Vuitton rich by doing that. And so this is where you got to understand, there's nothing wrong with wearing designer stuff. There's nothing wrong with having nice stuff. There's nothing wrong with wanting nice things, but you have to be able to afford it first. I used to guest teach in Detroit public schools. And when I used to teach there, it's a rough school district. I would talk to the kids about life, motivation and entrepreneurship and money and success. And one of the things that I would ask is, how many of you have a job? Almost all of them raised their hand saying that they had a job. My next follow-up question was, how many of you have a bank account? Nobody raised their hand. So I asked, what do you do with your paycheck? They said, well, we get a physical check, then we go to the liquor store, we get it cashed. The liquor store owner takes 1 to 10%. Then you buy pop, candy, a bunch of junk on the way out, and by the time you're out of the store, you've already given away half of your paycheck. I call it a net zero thinking, where we think in terms of spending. If I have $1,000, I can go out and buy this handbag, this nice thing. If I have 10 grand, I can go on this nice vacation. If I have 50 grand, I can go on and buy this nice car. We think in terms of spending because we think, if I have this money, how can I spend it? Now, if you break away from that and now you start creating a buffer and you don't spend all of your money, the next problem is we save our money. Because for me, the only financial education that I was given was save your money. Because if you're not spending it, now you are building up a big bank account, and if you have a big bank account, you'll be wealthy. But the reality is, you will never be able to become wealthy through your savings. Your savings will never make you wealthy. And if you don't believe me, I'll give you just a mathematical term. Your savings right now are growing by essentially nothing, but let's just say 1%. And I'm being very, very generous here. Savings grow by 1%, and inflation is higher than 1%, and we can see now inflation is extremely high, but even before the 2020 pandemic, inflation was still higher than 1%. We were 2 or 3%. Inflation means that the value of your savings are dropping. So if inflation is higher than your savings, that means that your savings